Hello. So in the previous videos, we spent some time talking about other JavaScript, especially on how to create modules and how to load them, especially on the browser. And like one of the main things we have in here is that now we have a main file, and that main module, it's loading a listings module that it has an export default. That's why we are able to do these import listings in here. And then also very important, don't forget, here when we are importing our main.js file, which is kind of like our main point of entrance, then we're calling that like a module. Like we have to import it as type module, okay? Now, the thing is that now I want to move into the next part, which is going to be to start talking about Node.js, okay? So Node.js is a library, so we already do many of that. It's a way, or it's an interpreter that allows you to run JavaScript directly on the server. So if we come in here and I just run Node, then you can see that I can just start like writing JavaScript code. So for instance, I can go and say names equals, or even better, let names. I don't even need to do the let, but in any case, like let's say John, Alexis, Guerra. Of course, I don't even know how to write my name, and then that's a string, and I can go and split that by like the empty string, which is going to get like names, that it's an array that has like a length of 4. So it's very similar to Python if you have done it in that, or any other scripting language, okay? And the cool thing about that is that now you can use that for running things on the backend. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to come in here and into the GitHub repository that we are doing, and I'm going to start moving or migrating things into like creating like a very basic application with Node.js. However, yeah, like, let's try to do it, and then I can try to explain like the general idea of what's happening. So for that, what I'm going to do is that if you see during the office hours, somebody asked me about branches. So let's use branches. So I'm going to create a new branch, and I think there is multiple ways of doing that. I like what we learned in there is that we can use the git switch. And then if I do git switch help, then you can see that there is one option for creating a new branch. And then I'm going to say git switch -e, and then I'm going to say node express. Okay, so hopefully that will work. Yes. And then if I do git branch, now this one creates the branch and then also checks it out. Like if you want to do it manually, you have to do git branch and then create the branch, but I think with -b, as in bye-bye. And then you do git checkout, I think. Or you can do git checkout with -b, I don't know. But in any case, go and check about GitHub documentation. So now that I have this thing in here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to move things pretty drastically in here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a public folder. Yes. So actually, let's go and call it frontend. Okay. I'm going to create this git, frontend project, and then what I'm going to do in there is that I'm going to do a git move. Hopefully this is still recording, seems like it is. I'm going to do git move of all of the files into the frontend. Will that work? Kind of. It seems like it's refusing with the source and destination, so let me see. Can I move the about to the front end? Yes. So I want to move the CSS data. Should we keep? I think I'm going to keep the delete me. Yes. And then the JavaScript and the index, and I'm going to move all of that to the front end. What else do I have in there? Yeah, I think I can leave the package JSON in there. The README I can leave in there. That path, I don't think it has anything important. So git rm like the path, and I'm also going to delete the delete me, which was an example that I was doing during office hours. And of course, so what the heck is that path then? Oh, yeah, it's a directory. So what's your problem with the path? Interesting. Yes. So let me just remove the path, and hopefully it doesn't break anything. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do a commit, moving the front end to a separate folder. Oops, folder. -A, and then let me see the status and what we have in here. I still have, so let me do the git rm of the delete me, the license and everything else. Good, perfect. All of this seems fine. And then I do have, yes, I'm going to restart. Yeah, actually, I'm not going to use reload anymore, okay? So having done that, if we take a look here at how the files are looking like, I move all of my index.html, pretty much everything I did, I moved that into the front end, okay? And then I'm going to create a new file, which I can call like my app.js. But I don't want that in there. I actually want that directly in here. So I'm going to call it yes, like app.js. Or let's go and call it, we can call it like server.js or backend if you want, okay? And then that backend, you can go and start writing. And as you can see, now VS Code is very angry that I closed, oops, I closed too much. VS Code was angry that I was deleting, or that I moved all of those files without letting him know. So, and then I can just go and start creating things in here. So our first Node.js application is going to be our typical Hola Mundo. And then if you want to run this thing, once you have Node.js installed, the only thing you have to do is go and run the things like that, okay? So remember, like this is going to get really interesting because basically, we were running things only in the front end, and now I'm also going to be running things in the back end. So we have JavaScript in the front end and JavaScript in the back end. If you want to run something in there, there are some things that only work in the browser and some things that only work in the server. We have the npm that you have been seeing. You can install packages, blah, 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 dependencies. But this application that we have in here, which by the way is not running anymore because I don't have the server, now what we are going to start doing is that we are going to start creating like a little backend that let us try to serve this thing. So for that, we are going to be using two things, Node and Express. So Express.js, it's a very simplistic library. It's one of the most used libraries for creating applications on the web. And then in order for you to create a little server with Express.js, you have to install it like this. So we can just copy and paste this. By the way, now the default npm with LTS timeline. Yes, so but is that, I hope that installs the latest version. So remember that when you do npm install, the minus save is going to say, I wanna save that as a dependency, and then you have it in here. Good, perfect. So now we are using Express 5. And then if you wanna start creating a server in there, the way that you create that server is that you go and say, first you have to import Express, and then this is showing how it is done using CGS, which is the default in Node.js, but we actually just do Express. I want to import Express from Express, as you can see in there, and then once I have done that, I am going to create an app initializing the Express application, and then I am just going to start listening on whatever port you have in here. So I'm going to say that my port is going to be either process environment port or the port 3000. So basically this is going to try to see if there is an environment variable called port, and if not, then I'm going to listen on the default, which is 3000. And then I'm going to start this in here, the port. And as you can see, Copilot is extremely eager to write the code for me, but basically you need an event handler that says something like the server is running on this port. So if I run that and then I run again the backend, this is going to be now running the port 3000. I can then go and connect in here, although this is not going to show anything because I didn't add the next step, which is going to be like what happens when somebody requests the default resource, which in this case is just going to be the / resource. So when I do that, you're going to receive another event handler in here. And that event handler, whenever you're doing express, that event handler, it's usually going to take 2 parameters. One parameter we're going to call the request, and the other one we are going to call the response. And you can do things as Copilot is suggesting in here, just returning hola mundo, something like that. And then when you do that, and then you refresh this page, nothing happens because you have to restart the server. So I'm doing Control-C, and then rerunning that. And by the way, I'm getting this warning, which I should address right away. And this, remember that I told you that it should ring a bell later? Since I am going to be using ESM modules or ES6 modules, then you have to go in your package JSON. You have to say this application is going to be of type module. So by that, Node realizes that it shouldn't be using CGS modules, which is the default it has. And then it should go back to just using ESM. Then I can refresh, and then I can reload that, and then I can have this running. Okay, and then we have our first application. Now, this thing of having to rerun the server can be very cumbersome. So there is multiple things that you can do for doing that. Like one of the things you can do, there is actually a package, as I was telling you. npm is the way of finding that. There is a package called NodeMon. And if you search for that, is this package in here. It's explanation on how you can install it. So I'm going to do npm install -- save dev, because it's not really, I think, although I'm kind of going to use it like for the npm start. So yeah, I think it still can be called dev only. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. But then I'm going to install it as a development dependency. And then what I'm going to do is that here on the scripts, I'm going to put a new script called start. And then you can go and say, I want to run NodeMon on the backend.js file. However, like this is only going to work if I have NodeMon installed globally, which I don't. And I can fix that by installing this. But since you don't want to force that into whoever is going to be using your application, here is a trick that's a little bit confusing, but hopefully you can survive with this. So I'm going to run NodeMon from the Node modules, which is where I just installed it from like locally. So if you see here in the Node modules, in the Node modules, I'm going to run NodeMon, and then from that, I think there is a bin, and then NodeMon.javascript file. So if you go here into NodeMon, in the bin, there is NodeMon JavaScript. So I'm actually running the JavaScript for the NodeMon thing. And that should allow me to run NodeMon for this one. And we can test that by doing npm install, just making sure we have everything installed, and then I just do npm start, which is this script that I say in here, and then now we have NodeMon running, and NodeMon is going to have a huge advantage for us, is that now I can have my application in here, and then I can go and just change things in here, like for instance, adding the little clown, I think I am, and then I just refresh, and notice that every time I change things in here, like if I add things in here so you can see the change. When I save, it notices that there is a change, and then it reruns things, okay? So that is the basics on how you can get started with Node and Express, okay? So let me stop in there for the next video.